Hey everyone, Dr. Frunky here with a really special unboxing video. Before we get into the knife of subject today, I wanted to have a brief discussion about what is a custom knife. So, custom knives are unique pieces made by individuals or very small groups that make super special, super limited, often one-off knives. And I wanted to discuss the level of customization available out there. So this might be what I would say is the lowest end of sort of user customization, where this is a beautiful Peter Rosenti Nirvana 2.0. I recently released the video on this knife. This knife was completely made by Peter Rosenti and randomly offered one day on his Instagram, and I was fast enough to be able to pick it up, but I had no part in the overall development or the choices in the materials and the appearance of this knife. I'm certainly not complaining in any way. It's a spectacular piece, but I did not have any input, but that still qualifies as a custom knife. Maybe one level beyond that might be this Gavco Trasher. Michael Gavik never makes the same knife twice, but I saw that he was making these shrunk trashers, and then I loved the fact he was making these green Timascus and green black Timascus builds. They absolutely blew me away, and I sent him a message and I said, wouldn't it be great if you had one in this size with green Timascus? And so that sort of happened one day, and he sold it to me. It was just a happenstance, though. I didn't actually spec this out or ask him to do specific things to this. He did the chisel grind and everything like that, and the clip in the way that he wanted to do, and it's perfectly fine with me. But it was a one level more where I had maybe a small amount of input into the way that knife was developed. One level beyond that is where you get a knife like this custom Koenig Arias, where you spec out every single piece of the knife, where I spec'd the blade, the finish, the pivot, the scales, the hardware, the backside, the lock side, the clip. Every single piece was a decision by me, and it is the way that I wanted it to be configured. Now, this was actually all within the sort of production capacity of the Koenig factory. None of these things are particularly strange to that factory, and they could reproduce this in a second. This is sort of things within their power, and so I didn't push any real limits in creating this. Now, it's a beautiful piece. I'm deeply grateful that I have it, but there is yet another level of customization, and I'm going to talk about it with regards to the knife that we're going to show today. This is going to be the Brown Knives Servo. So there have already been two great videos on this knife done by Jim Skelton and Epic Snuggle Bunny. I may be the third person to be making this video. But again, this knife is made by custom knife maker Craig Brown. He is an engineer by career, and this is sort of his side project and passion. You can follow him at Brown Knives on Instagram. This is the certificate of authenticity right here, where we have the model as the servo, the blade in CPM 154 with titanium frame lock, with the stainless steel insert. Mine happens to be number 13, and the signature of the maker. And there's a little bit of info on how to take care of your knife. So without much further ado, I want to show you my most perfectly Frunky customized knife, the Brown Knives Servo. Before I take the knife out, I want you to appreciate this wonderful packaging that the knife comes in. It's a beautifully done foam, almost like a Nowpak case right here. Really, really nicely done. I love it when knives come in cases like this. But I'm going to show you briefly some of the amazing customization that Craig has done for me on this knife. And if you've seen any of the other servos, perhaps you might recognize what's different. If you haven't seen any of the other servos, why don't I go ahead and help you out by showing you two other Brown Knives servos. So there may be a couple of other videos on YouTube about this knife, but nowhere else are you going to find a video where you have three separate Brown Knives servos ready to go for display. Up top, we've got Craig's own personal servo. This is sort of his tester unit, where he's testing out this beautiful new milling pattern. He's got the Damasteel blade that he uses on a daily basis so that he can test and see how strong the Damasteel is. This beautiful milling pattern carries on to the back right here. He's added this over travel stop to the knives. This is a new thing right here. I'll flip all three of these knives over so you can see sort of the different levels of complexity that you can get. This knife down here belongs to my good buddy and everyone's friend, Today's Grail, Tomorrow's Beater, aka Nico. He sent me this knife originally, so this was the first servo that I got my hands on. And so it was very exciting to have a little sneak preview of the knife that I had coming. In getting that knife, I sort of got some ideas about some of the things that I wanted to try. I knew that I didn't really want to have the windows. I wasn't a huge fan of the way that looked, and he had talked about doing some milling patterns. But at the time that my build came up, the milling patterns had not been set in stone. And so I talked to him about this perfect spinal pattern that he's done, and we'll get into the specifics on that in just a second. So why don't I go ahead and bring out our trusty ruler for a little size objectivity here. We'll figure out how big this knife is. Up front, you're looking at right at about a 4-inch blade. You're looking at about 8.8 inches overall length. And back to the pivot, you're looking at 4.3 inches. So you're fitting 4 inches of blade into a sub 9-inch knife, and that is an amazing blade to handle ratio. It's incredible how Koenig has been able to fit that much blade into the handle right there. Again, the handle is just under 5 inches, maybe 4.9 inches, somewhere in that ballpark, and your grip length is going to be right at about 4.3, 4.4 inches. The width is coming in at under half an inch, and the blade stock is 150 thousandths on the dot. So very, very impressive. I'm going to bring out another couple of knives for a quick size comparison. Here's a Spyderco Paramilitary 2. So you can see this is a full-size knife right here. Long blade, 4 inches right there. How about I bring out a CRK large Inkosi? So these knives are on the sort of the higher or the larger end of what people consider normal EDC knives. So this Brown Knives Servo, you need to know what you're getting yourself into. So these knives are beautiful, but I'm going to move them to the side for a second so we can sort of focus on my specific knife and break this down anatomically. Up front is that CPM 154 blade, and mine is done in a full hand-rubbed satin. It is a beautiful, beautiful thing. It's practically mirror polished. I'm going to do my best not to capture my own face on the camera here. The blade shape is quite unique in the industry. I don't know of any other knives that look quite like that. It's a full flat grind with a nice edge on it. I used this guy to slice some tomatoes on a recent vacation that I took, and it worked beautifully. The blade shape dips right here, and so it's actually a very comfortable place to place the thumb when doing some of the harder cutting tasks or the finer cutting tasks right there. There's a little bit of jimping right here that's not completely functional right there. That's a little face reveal for you guys. And the edge is only sharpened back to about that point. I think some of that has to do with the fact that the blade sits just like that in the handle. Moving back to the pivot, this is a flipper deployment only. This thing runs on some incredibly smooth ceramic ball bearings. These beautifully done CNC knives are really among the very best flippers out there because of how ridiculously smooth they are. Speaking of the pivot, he did an absolutely amazing thing by making me a custom Dr. Frunkfied skull pivot. The regular pivot on these knives is actually a Y connector, which is something that is very relevant to a servo device. Geeks out there might have a better understanding of that. But what I really wanted to have was that skull pattern, and I just threw that out there one day, and he totally executed it beautifully. Moving back to the handles, he's done this in blackened titanium, something that I've been in love with ever since I picked up my Robert Carter BBM over here. I love the look of blackened titanium, and I'm certainly fascinated by the way that that's produced. It is incredibly difficult, and Craig says he may never do it again because it was such a pain in the neck. Okay, I'm not Nick, but I'll try. Anyways, he did this incredible blackening, and then he did this anatomically accurate human spine on here. Now, some people thought that this might be like a graboid or something from the Alien movies, but no, this is in fact a human spine right here. On the back, you can see that he's done the blackening again, and this time we've got some Timascus accents. So he did a blackening on the Timascus, and then he green anodized it. So not only is it on the clip and the over travel stop, but it's also on the backspacer. So it's absolutely incredible. This knife has some small variations from some of the other ones, which demonstrate his constant quality improvement. There's a little cutout right here for the fingers. It's got the over travel stop. and it's got some changes to the lock interface right there. And so this is a really, really spectacular knife. I'm deeply thankful to Craig and his wife for working with me to create what is an extremely special knife to me. This is the highest end of customization that I've ever experienced, and it was a joy to do it with them. Let me know what you guys think of my Brown Knives Servo in the comments down below. Hit like and subscribe to my channel here. Check me and Craig out on Instagram. And as always, y'all, take care.